The California legislature kills a bill that would ban men from competing in women's sports, even though Governor Gavin Newsom told Charlie Kirk, well, he would agree with that sort of sentiment. Wow, the legislature not squaring with the governor. Also, the border numbers are in from March, and what makes you wonder, when Alejandro Mayorkas was saying the border is secure, I feel like he was lying. And San Francisco is giving out tickets for traffic speeding tickets. The fines are going to be based on your income, which feels discriminatory. All that more coming up on this episode of Turning Point tonight. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point tonight. Now, before we get to any of that, we have to address what I think is possibly a scandal. Now, and I don't want to bury the lead here, but Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, gave the longest speech that anyone's ever given on the Senate floor. 25 hours and 4 minutes he gave this speech. And I just have to wonder, how did that man not pee? Now, just for the record, it wasn't technically a filibuster because, well, he wasn't really filibustering any specific piece of legislation. It did disrupt the course of events for the Senate that day, but it didn't actually do anything. And nevertheless, he stood up there and rambled somewhat coherently, somewhat incoherently for 25 hours, but nobody's sure why. Didn't actually do anything specific other than gain him more attention. However, I believe there's a scandal going on, and that scandal is POTTY-GATE. Yes, it is a show late in the evening, so we're going to talk about this because I think it actually is kind of important and, worth discussing whether or not Cory Booker actually held in his potty the entire 25 hours. Here to comment on that and actually some serious stuff, we've got Hayley, Caronia, and Morgonn McMichael, Turning Point USA contributor. Guys, thanks so much for joining me in some silly discussion.
Thanks, Jobob.
So I'm gonna play you this video. This is Cory Booker as he's broken the record. This is Senator Chuck Schumer letting him know of that. Watch this, and then we'll discuss what I believe could be a massive scandal.
I just want to tell you a question. Do you know you have just broken the record? Do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you?
LOL, why? I don't understand why people would be proud. He just gave a really long speech. It didn't actually stop Republicans from doing anything. He didn't stick it to the man. It doesn't make any sense. But here's the thing that I think that needs more attention. Obviously, if you're standing up on that podium for 25 hours and 4 minutes, the obvious natural bodily functions would probably have to occur. But when asked about whether or not he wore a diaper, listen to this answer, and I'd love to get your commentary on the back end of this. Clip 4.
To follow up on Manu's question, and I'm sorry to be crude here, but there's been a lot of speculation about whether or not you're wearing some kind of device, like a catheter or a diaper, and I'm sorry for even asking you this question. I feel weird about it. But were you wearing anything that allowed you to not have to go to the bathroom for 25 hours?
I don't want the Senate doctor to get mad at me. I don't want my doctor to get mad at me. But I really spent time dehydrating myself beforehand, so I did not have to go to the bathroom.
You didn't have to go to the bathroom at all for 25 hours.
Hayley, I want to get your reaction first. He never says no, right? He doesn't say no, I didn't wear a diaper or a bag of any kind, not to get too specific here, but he said, well, I don't want to upset the Senate. I don't want to upset my doctor. I did dehydrate myself. All of those things can be true. And he was wearing a pair of Depends.
You can be dehydrated. You still need to pee. This is 25 hours. This was more than a day. Again, he spent more than a day doing absolutely nothing but just wasting time. He has also called the filibuster, as you pointed out, that this wasn't exactly a filibuster. He wasn't blocking anything. But Cory Booker even called this an abuse of power back in 2022. And now Democrats are like fawning all over him like, woo, like, good job. We're so happy for you. We're so proud of you. For doing nothing but maybe holding in his pee for a really long time. I think he probably took a page out of Joe Biden's book and maybe borrowed one of his diapers.
Hayley, well, first of all, you brought up a good point that, yes, technically it wasn't a filibuster because it didn't stop legislation. It did disrupt the Senate from its proceedings during the day. But because the filibuster word was used, I want to play this clip of, well, somebody that Cory Booker might agree with talking about, well, what a terrible thing the filibuster is. Go ahead and play this clip of a filibuster denier.
And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do.
Oh yeah, that's President Obama saying that yeah, we shouldn't have a filibuster, and then Cory Booker effectively does the motions of a filibuster. Morgan, really quick before I get your comment, let's play that clip too of another person defending the filibuster after they called for removing it.
The American people want less partisanship in this town, but everyone in this chamber knows that if the majority chooses to end the filibuster, if they choose to change the rules and put an end to democratic debate, then the fighting and the bitterness and the gridlock will only get worse.
Morgan, I know we're playing a ton of clips, but Obama there defending the filibuster, then saying it's a relic of Jim Crow, then Cory Booker effectively doing the motions of a filibuster, all while supposedly, allegedly not having to go to the bathroom. What are your thoughts overall?
Listen, I don't even know if the left knows what a filibuster is at this point. It's kind of funny to me just to see how Cory Booker stood there and did absolutely nothing for 25 hours. And as far as POTTY-GATE goes, listen, when it's 2025 is happening, everyone flocks to New York for the New Year's. There are people that can't even stand there for 5 hours, let alone 10 hours, let alone 25 hours. And we all know that everyone in New York City on New Year's Eve are wearing diapers. So to me, it seems like Cory Booker is definitely wearing a diaper.
Right. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. I did ask X's Grok AI, hey, what is the Guinness Book of World Records for longest time without having to go to the bathroom? And it didn't have an answer. So in theory, Cory Booker could have also broken a Guinness Book of World Records. That is, if he wasn't wearing a diaper of any kind. Moving on, because I'm sure everybody's probably tired of POTTY-GATE already. I want to move to this San Francisco bill San Francisco new policy is that San Francisco's speeding violations are going to be fined based on people's income. In other words, if you have a lower income or you're below the federal poverty line, you're eligible for about a 50% discount. If you're homeless, you're eligible for an 80% discount on a speeding ticket. Hayley, what does this feel like to you? There is the case to be made that, well, some people who make more money and have to pay the full amount of fine are probably less likely to be caught speeding, but at the same time, it does seem pretty discriminatory that your ticket fine is based on how much money you make.
Well, it's absolutely discriminatory. You do the crime, you do the time, or pay the fine, whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter, what kind of socioeconomic background you had or what color you are. If you speed, you should pay the crime. You should pay for the crime of speeding. It's absolutely DEI, the worst of DEI, if you will. But San Francisco is not too big on crime or law enforcement, if you will. They kind of let criminals run amok. They let homeless people poop all over the place, and there's needles everywhere, and they let people smash and grab CVS and all this stuff, and they just San Francisco's in decline, so this doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's a kind of a bizarre thing. Morgan, one of the big conservative counterpoints to really any sort of taxes, or at least to using taxes, is that taxes are usually used to disincentivize something. So does this, in a way, make it so that you're incentivizing people who make less money to drive as fast as they possibly can?
Honestly, I think it does incentivize more crime, especially for those of lower socioeconomics in San Francisco. Because here's the deal. If you get a speeding ticket for $200 and now all of a sudden you only have to pay $25 because you're an indigenous person, then they're not going to care what the law is. And unfortunately, living in America, whatever the law is applies to all U.S. citizens, regardless of what you look like or how much money you make. And I also think it's really funny because if this law wasn't in place, I was in traffic court this morning, half of that courthouse this morning would have only had to pay 50% of their crimes, whereas I would have had to pay 100% of my fine that I got today if I didn't show up to court. So I just think it's completely blasphemous behavior coming from San Francisco. Are we shocked? No, but this definitely needs to not happen.
Morgan, have you considered trying being poorer? Maybe that would help you get a less of a fine. Speaking of California, this is disappointing. There were two bills in the California legislature that went down in committee in the Assembly. Bill AB 44 would prohibit any person from participating in any activity, bathrooms, sports in general, outside of the gender that you were born with. That obviously went down. AB 89 just said, hey, just sports. We're not even touching the bathrooms. This is just sports. Both of those went down. Hayley, in the wake of Gavin Newsom basically agreeing that, yeah, trans people in sports or men competing in women's sports is not good, shouldn't he have to like stand up to his own legislation and say, hey, we should pass this, or at least help them push it past the committee hearings?
Well, I think Gavin Newsom was lying. I don't think that he really believes what he said when he had Charlie Kirk on his podcast. I think California is going to California, and I think Gavin Newsom's setting himself up for 2028. And he's going to say whatever people on the right or moderates want to hear, so that they think that he's this like sympathetic character, and he's just rolling out the red carpet for himself politically.
Yeah, Morgan, I think Hayley's absolutely right. He's trying to set himself up for 2028. Having said that, when Kamala Harris didn't take stances on quote-unquote controversial things and kind of was just vague about everything, I didn't really work out well for her. Do you think Gavin is making a mistake not coming out in support of an 80-20 issue?
I mean, obviously, this is a big issue in our country right now, and I do think he's making a mistake, because when it is such a gap between, you know, honestly, like the 2% of people that think that trans people, which are just biological men competing in women's sports, should happen in our country, you know, the majority of people don't want these radical policies to happen in our country. So Newsom setting himself up for 2028, I think he's setting himself up for disappointment when the moderates and independents see him supporting these more radical leftist ideologies, especially after President Trump signed the executive order banning men from competing in women's sports. So he's essentially going directly against the federal government here.
Yeah, now obviously the governor can't force bills through, but he could at least throw his support behind something that he came out in support of. But that would make him, I don't know, an honest person. Hayley, Morgan, we'll be right back after the break to talk about more of this things going on around the country. And we're also going to check in with Monica Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent, on the whole Tariff Liberation Day thing happening at the White House. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.